Welcome, everyone, from the middle of both everywhere and the middle of nowhere to the voice of meaning. Bum 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 bum, ba-da-dum bum 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 bum, bum 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 bum, ba-da-dum bum 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 bum, ba-da-dum bum 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 bum, ba-da-dum ba-da-dum bum bum bum, bum 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 bum, ba-da-dum ba-da-dum bum bum. We don't aren't professional enough to put up the theme song played by my wife on the harp, but there is a separate video for that,
Good.
and invite you to listen to it. I'm Neil, and this is Ulrich, and we have a wonderful guest. His name is Tom Muench. I met him in September of 1963, almost 60 years ago. He was my ninth grade social studies world geography teacher and made tremendous impression on me and probably thousands of other students over the years. So welcome, Tom.
Thank you. Very
And
kind words.
we're going to ask some questions, and feel free to chime in. I know from previous talking with you, you've been in education now for 54 years,
Yeah.
and you started your educational career in upstate New York. How did you get there, and how did you become a teacher? What, you know, from your birth to when you started teaching? Give us a little story.
Well, I've always told people that the reason are my kids when I started. Teachers were always good to me, particularly my high school years and coaches. And that had tremendous impact on me. Um, I had one impact that had obviously some kind of effect on me, and that's I lived on the north side of Syracuse. My father, along with other Muenches, had a candle company they worked at. My mother died when I was 7. I was going to St. John the Baptist, and I can remember things about the day of the funeral and other things, which, wow, I was 7 years old. And as I went along, and then my father remarried, which was it didn't work out. It made things much different because we had my first mother was Irish and loving and all those kinds of things, which didn't have an awful lot to do with me, except I became very independent. I'd hide from that situation, and I had the benefit growing up of I started delivering papers in 3rd grade uh, of not being in poverty or this and that. I guess we all just went our married way. Rich kids, poor kids, all kids had jobs. We came out of our parents were in the Depression, and we just had jobs, which was really good. I got to understand it and became very appropriately named the soda jerk at the age of 13 at Lawler Drugs and DeWitt. But what really brought this out, I mean, I loved sports. That was my outlet, and I loved them. And I sometimes was way too competitive, but that was my outlet. I was blessed when I went to high school of 2 great things. One, I was cut my freshman year of basketball. We had School of Fayetteville, and I did not make the team. In fact, I was 13, and the rest of the kids were a year older. That isn't an excuse. I just didn't make the team. The JV coach, Coach George Hollenbeck, had such a tremendous effect on my life. It was amazing. He asked me to be a manager, and he said, if you want to become a basketball player, I can help you with that too. And taught me a lot of defense. And then to make a wonderful story very quickly, our senior year, we were the only team at Fayetteville Mainland to ever win the Section 3 title. We had a blending of great basketball team. And therefore we all stuck together throughout our lives. And every time we get together, we were taught never to quit. We were taught never to quit. Well, in those days in education, if you weren't too successful, and a lot of my kids just quit school, or a lot of my fellow friends, and would go on, I was told that I'd never make it to college or make it through college. I used to say I was very blessed because I was so stupid. I didn't realize what they were saying. And this coach told us, you just never quit. And so my basketball took me to playing and going to Cortland. And but my desire was to teach. I coached Babe Ruth League and other things when I was a senior in high school. And I also, the guidance counselor, Mrs. Farnham, set it up so I could do sixth grade in the afternoon my senior year. And I worked with the sixth grade Mr. Woods, who was a great teacher. And then as I got to Cortland, it was Cortland State Teachers College. And I wanted to teach, and I was taught thoroughly, you never quit. And my sophomore year, Dr. Mulholland told me, Tom, look at, this is before there was great understanding of learning disabilities, I guess. I didn't become aware till years later looking at them. But at any rate, he said, look, it's going to take you an hour and a half longer than anybody else. Now, I'm sure other people told me to do that, to learn. And I had a love of history. I had great professors, and not knowing, but I was dyslexic, and I can see now reversing letters. I can actually see them. My wife has checks phone calls and phone numbers, so you can imagine me at math. I mean, geez, and I actually would see it the wrong way. So at Cortland State, if you had 3 minimum essentials, you'd fail the paper. So I was getting A plus Fs. And I just battled my way through it with the help of so many teachers. It was just amazing. And then I ended up interviewing with Ward Edinger, the superintendent. I found out 3 years later what was the clincher for me to get the job. I always felt I can motivate kids and I can help them learn. And I just felt that. And he said to me, it's an English and history combined class. I said, geez, I'm very weak in English. I really am. And he said, well, there's people that can really help us. There's some master teachers in that school. And I said, oh boy, I don't know, and all that. I found out later, because I was being truthful, he heard a lot of other people saying things that, and I ended up actually getting to be, the kids would evaluate me and felt I was a very strong English teacher, mostly because I demanded things that I just didn't want to go through what I went through. But I just knew I had some things that were techniques to get with students. First of all, the greatest thing that I learned was failure. And I had a good understanding of how that failure felt, hurt, and I had success. The success was actually athletic, but I felt the power of that. And I solved a lot of my problems by taking, and I've solved some other kids' problems by taking the strengths of me, the athletic things, and switching them. For example, I weightlift words. I'm not a good reader, but I'll read 15 minutes a day, and all those kinds of things. So, and student teaching just took me to a whole new level. And so for a kid that graduated with maybe a 2.7 average, it was 4.0 in my master's degree, A+ in my thesis, uh, and that I used to help an awful lot of my kids.
Mm-hmm.
But the main reason was teachers were just so great. I didn't have, I had what I had. It had nothing to do, when we grew up our era. For example, I didn't sit and talk to my coach about my family situation, but I did in a way, and he'd just say, well, you got to get over it.
Interesting.
Sometimes,
Mhm.
sometimes that doesn't work, but sometimes it does. And I had such faith in the guy, it's almost like, well, build a bridge and get over it.
Mhm.
And so all of those assets just reinforced it. I did have a blessing. My father, it's a family candle company with a lot of cousins and everybody involved in it. My brother's a priest, my sister's a nurse. We were all in the helping occupations, helping others. My father was not an obstacle. He was a factory man, supported us. Never once. I worked at the factory and, but at Summers. So
Let me
that's,
let me digress just one
yeah, go
one
ahead.
moment. Um, where did you meet your wife? And I know you've been married now 63 years, so that would have put you in almost at the end of college. I know there's an
Yes.
interesting story about her, about Mary
Did I tell
Lee.
you about it before?
Yes.
She didn't. I did with a buddy of mine say, that's the girl I'm going to marry. When I saw her, I'm loud and noisy and she's quiet and reserved. But I liked her. But when she came into the local pub, Dom's, there happened to be another girl sitting on my lap. And I swear to this day, there just weren't enough chairs. Uh, that didn't start things off too well. And numerous other things. Well, she stayed as far away as she could. Also not being a klutz, she worked her way all through college. She lived in Cortland as a waitress at the community restaurant. And even back in those days, when you left a dime tip, that was really bad. I've heard about that for 63 years.
Uh-oh.
But at any rate, we ended up student teaching together, and you had to live in the communities, which is a real, boy, that was the best. Cortland's program was amazing. But at any rate, we lived in the communities and drive back on the weekends. I had a car, a 51 Chevy, and Bo McNeil and myself and Mary Lee would drive, and we weren't making a big hit. We'd tease her and get her on my head. But she taught in Corning and I taught in Painted Post. And we got to know each other. It started getting pretty good, I thought. Unbeknownst to me, she believes this strongly. She said she prayed. She said, if we don't choose our sites. If we end up together, then I'm going to have to take a closer look at this idiot. And so we were in Binghamton, and she stayed with her Aunt Ag, and I was in Endicott. They're close towns. And so her Aunt Ag really liked me, and I liked her and her Uncle Tim a lot. And Mary Lee was going with a shoe salesman guy. And so anytime she had a date, her Aunt Ag invited me to dinner so that I would be sitting there and have a good time, kids. Well, in essence, I wore her down to the point of going, oh, the heck with it. And so we got engaged in May and got married a year later because she wanted to teach for a year. And there's even more to the story about it, but that's the
The rest is history, and I bet
yes, every day she gets up going, what did I do? But I was able to give good advice to my sons. All three of them, I told them to just keep your mouth shut and act stupid, and you'll get through.
That's good advice. My wife and I just celebrated our 14th anniversary yesterday, and we
Oh,
went out.
wonderful.
Yeah, and we went out to lunch with a couple that have you beat. They were celebrating their 64th anniversary,
Super.
so we were really pumping them for a lot of pointers on how to stay together.
Well, here's the secret we have in terms of holding things together. We go out to dinner 2 times a week. Have fine dining, fine meal, fine wine, all that. She'd go Tuesday, I'd go Thursday. It's a Henny on joke.
That's great.
I got giggling a little bit because I think of the places I took her. Oh, you'll know this. Our first date was the Orville barbecue. A lot of class, right, Neil?
Yeah,
And then the next one was at the pig stand.
I think I remember the pig stand. Yeah,
But
but
yes, and in those days, divorce was actually illegal in New York State, unless of this and that. It was very strict. Divorce wasn't the question. Murder, now that's different. I mean, she has
well,
a lot of people that would support her. But we do marriage things for the Catholic Church, taught to the kids and stuff like that. And it's a different era,
yeah.
but
I heard you nominated her for sainthood.
oh, everybody, kids calling it a saint. We went to a Miami football game in Miami, up in the stands, and after just the first half, the guys behind me go, "You're a saint." She said, "They just go, she's." I mean, my students, a lot of my kids will put in Saint Mary. It's how's the saint? Oh yeah, oh good Lord, yes, yes, good
That
Lord. Can you imagine being with me 24 hours a day during COVID for 2 years?
wow. That'll be a subject for another time.
Oh my
So
God.
your first couple years, were they in the Jamesville DeWitt school district, or were they somewhere else?
No, we lived in Bob Wall, who was the vice principal, um, lived in Seneca Knolls. It's up by Ballsville. So it was 20 miles away. I don't know, something like that. And the only route was the thruway,
Hmm.
and told us about these houses. And there was $400 down. And I'm pretty sure I checked to Mary Lee, it was $106 a month, $112 a month. And we got the payment, the second payment we get paid twice was 106. We were actually $6 short every month during those younger years. And so we drive to school and drive back. And then after 3 years, we moved to Lyncourt. And then we came to looking at some houses and do it, not thinking we could do it. And we ended up at Tom Eaton's house, his parents, and it worked out so good. And we've been living here since 1969. So,
Got it. Though when I started in your class, it was 1963.
right. That's
And
out there
yeah,
now.
I'd like to talk about that year in that class.
Certainly.
I remember it well.
So do I.
I remember the first day when you
Oh,
introduced yourself and said, I'm teaching world geography, but I'm also teaching world view. And you did. And you taught us how to read the newspaper, and we got the New York Times every day. My father was glad to pay the nickel a day because it was less than what he had to pay at the newsstand.
right.
Um, I don't know if you remember this, but you inspired a few of us to start a team in a local radio show called News Bowl.
Yes.
And we had to know about the current events that week. And they told us we needed to read one of the Syracuse newspapers, and they suggested also the New York Times. And what I'm very proud of, it's not football or basketball, and our teams never lost a match. We never got any of the questions wrong for the entire 4 years of
Wow.
being,
I
yeah,
didn't
we'd
know
have to
that.
go, yeah, we'd have to show up at that WSYR studio.
Yes, I listen.
And we've had some ties because, there were other schools that were able to answer all their questions, but we never lost a game. It was patterned after, remember the General Electric College Bowl? It was a
Yes,
TV show. Yeah. So they had
true.
this news bowl, and you were the inspiration of it, and we were good. We
Yes.
so um, I was looking through. I have a 1966 yearbook. I was a junior that year, and our news bowl team um, was there,
Who
and
were the other people on it? The other kids?
Um, there was Laurie Seidenberg,
Seidenberg,
Angela
yep.
McDowell, Harry Friedman. There
Gary,
was,
yeah.
yeah, Wendy Evers. I remember she was a year
Yes,
younger.
yes.
And there were others who were alternates, but
Yeah.
Harry and I were there almost every time, and we never missed a question. Always one of us knew,
That's something.
or all of us most of the time knew the answers to the questions. Thanks to your giving us or imparting upon us a worldview. During that school year, Kennedy was shot. The civil rights movement was in full swing. It was very, very tumultuous time, and we learned a lot in a lot of new emergent African countries.
Yep.
And I remember them well because I used to collect stamps, and I'd have stamps from the Gold Coast, and all of a sudden the Gold Coast became Ghana,
Right.
and on and on and on. It was a very interesting time to study world geography and to receive a world view. What other things that you remember that you were your goals for teaching in those days?
Well, my the one that I realized that I didn't plan, but I guess I did in my own way. But it started to form more and more, was to set up a culture of learning for everyone. Everyone. Nobody in the class was going to be superior or inferior. It was, my son developed a team approach with his whole class, but we were the same way. And I tried, and I really felt it was important. I tried to make us equal in discussion, where we're willing to listen and discuss both sides. I know in my sixth period class, I had Vivian Matthews, an AFS student from England, and I had Raju. I don't know if you remember Raju. His last name was a big, long name, and he was a couple years older than you.
Yeah, I don't.
Everybody called him Raju from India. He came back to see me, in fact. But basically, that class was my Timmy McGrath. I can see them all sitting there. And they wanted to discuss what was going on. And as you said, there was assassinations, there was all kinds of dilemmas and things, uprisings and stuff that we dealt with and tried to take both sides. I took civil rights and tried to use it as using Ireland and showing not so much race, but also culture and conflict, and we discussed things. I brought in some speakers from the city, buddies of mine taught in the city, and it was a very interesting time. I'll give you one comparison. I don't want to be unfair to my honors classes, but Vince Monroso called me when Bobby Kennedy got killed, and it was the middle of the night here, and it was in June, right before Regents. My honors class was antsy about the Regents. My sixth period class, they said, who cares? And I was with them. I said, this is more important. And I was so proud of them. Those were very difficult years for me. mostly because there are kids that went to Vietnam. There are students of mine that were killed there. I understood both sides of the issue. It was just an upheaval that was just, and we were in the middle of it, dealing with it. And so I love going back to the Civil War and other wars, maybe to discuss and go back. That one really hurts. Even the music. I don't like watching movies of Vietnam. I had kids that came back and they didn't call it PST or whatever they call it now, but it was just a real hard time. Yeah, but my theme, first of all, was to get a culture of learning, the importance of learning, and discussion-based sharing of ideas. And I always, I believe, had reaching everybody to reach for excellence, full well knowing you're not going to reach it. That was always sort of a theme. And then tried to be unique in ways of learning. I don't know if it's with your class, but eventually we got to kids inventing their own world and having leeward, windward side.
Yeah, I remember that lesson well.
And, and so that was cool. That was cool.
Yeah.
And
I also remember when we were reading the New York Times, you were telling us, the difference between a news article and a columnist writing his opinion, and you helped us learn about the political persuasions. There was William F. Buckley and James Reston and Russell Baker. Those are the ones I remember pretty well. But there was Art Buchwald, who was a humorist. Art Buchwald, by the way, spoke at my college graduation.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, 1971. So it was inspiring. I was an average student because that class was not an honors class, but you taught it like an honors class.
Yeah.
I ended up with over, I think, a 95 average, which qualified me to go to Verna Fancett's honors class the next year, and that was great. She taught world history.
I had general classes, and a lot of those kids were just great kids, and we would go to the highest level you should go to. I learned a whole ton from those kids. And I set up a course for senior year called Current Events. This just gives you an idea of the times. And it was for a lot of my kids that weren't so much thinking of further education, but employment, and very hardworking kids, good, solid, great kids. And we were discussing as normal, and that was a loosey-goosey one because I wrote the whole curriculum for it. And Joe raised his hand and said, "Mr. Muench, can we now talk about Vietnam? We all know we're going." And that impacted me. I said, "You bet." And we didn't. And they did go. And a few didn't come back. And then when Junior Harrison came back, I had him speak to my honors class. And you look at it, you can understand why they got involved in it, and you have to look at it in the eyes of history. And then you understand, and then the idea of what if John F. Kennedy lived? What would have happened? What would he have done? They wrote a book about it. But that truly changed our society.
Yes.
That issue.
Absolutely. When did you start? A lot of us remember you as Mr. Muench, but a lot of us remember you as Coach Muench.
Yes.
Share with us your coaching experiences at JD. JD, by the way, is Janesville DeWitt.
Oh, yes, Janesville DeWitt. Carl Bjork called me and asked me if I would be on his staff with coaching football. Basketball is my game, but I coached a lot of, and by the way, football is a little bit easier I shouldn't say easier, controlled you can say something in a timeout in basketball and everything changes so rapidly. And then football, you don't run into that too much. At any rate, and all my guys I graduated with were envious and calling me. Now, I wasn't getting paid, but the idea from Cortland was you wanted to teach and coach. And if not that, teaching whatever your interest was. And so I started with Carl and started learning how to coach. And that I had a mentor, not only Carl, but Luzik and a lot of guys that stayed throughout, in their positions. The following year, Carl wanted me to start a freshman football team, which I did. And we would have 68, 70 kids out there. And Gary McLaughlin was a fifth-year senior. He couldn't play. I'm not sure how that all worked out, but at any rate, Gary was my assistant coach. I asked him if he'd help us, and we went through the rules. Well, as you already heard, my coaches, I talked about Coach Hollenbeck because he was a life coach. My baseball coach was too, and so was the football coach. Football is a game where everybody has a role on every play. There has to be, everybody has to work at the same thing, and there's so much team things, and so my teaching always was built on you just never quit. No matter where you are, you never quit. You never give up. You just don't. And I made it in a lot of places where people thought I would not make it. And so that was always the theme of my coaching. And my theme was teaching. And then my theme was preparing you to play varsity football for Coach Bjork. And then as a staff, we worked together. And I was sort of the counselor guy. Carl had to give kids some heat. He'd always say, look, I talked to him later, will you? And he would check if we were moving a kid up. He'd come to me and say, is he ready? Is he ready this way, that way? And we all had a role, and I'd scout games. And yet at every level, from all the coaches we worked with, the theme was you for the team and working as a team and working together as a team. And it just never stopped. I went 34 years with the freshmen. Coaching basketball, it was the same kind of thing, but you didn't have as much time in a sense, because you had games Tuesday, Friday, Thursday. You had a lot of games going on, stuff in teaching. But I kept that theme because that was the theme that carried me. And now I just emailed one of my former players, explaining the same thing that I explained to you earlier, that when I started coaching varsity football, now I don't know why. I mean, my start was freshman football. When I started varsity basketball, I really thought yelling was coaching. And I learned along the way, this Abe Lemons, who was a coach at a coaching clinic, said, you must meet with your players individually 10 minutes a week to see what they're thinking. That sounded like a good idea. I started to meet with them. Holy moly, what they were thinking, what I was thinking we were doing, were opposites. I mean, I learned greatly from my first couple teams, but they had to suffer me learning it that way. And yet I watch my sons coach, I watch other coaches. Quarterback, best example is quarterback. Quarterback running bootleg in our system just has to throw a couple interceptions before he realizes he should run instead of throw at that situation. And there's no other way to teach it. You can say, oh, don't, or don't, but you're in a game, the guy intercepts it, wrecks your drive. And it happens a couple times, and then, but I wasn't as, I was more established, but when my son started taking over and seeing the things that he did were just truly amazing. But it's the same deal. It's the culture of it. First thing he did when he coached at Oswego High School, the football players and athletes didn't like the kids in the band didn't like them. So simple, Paul said. He just lined up, he brought all the band members in and said, look, we're going to your competitions and we'll greet you when you come on the field. Football team would raise their helmets as the band marched through them. It solved a problem that could become a big problem. The band members, did they love the football? Yeah, they stayed the whole game, And then he just did numerous things. The one, I'm going to brag. I have one thing I did, and he copied it, and I thought it was great. I would have mothers practice. My wife would help me as it went on to write a letter so that it was worded in a way if a kid's mother, it could be a sister, it could be a good woman that's a friend, but no men were allowed in the field. And we'd have the kids teaching their mothers the positions. I got great pictures of it. And I don't know if you ever knew Pat Testa. Pat came, I think, a little later.
Yeah.
An assistant coach with a cigar. You can imagine him. And I also remember him yelling, come on, Mrs. Sarno, hit the sled. And the women would go through. And after that, they really understood how complex and how much those kids had to learn. And I'd hear mothers in the stands yelling, linebacker, you hit linebacker, and so it was that kind of thing, a community bringing together all types. I think probably the ultimate was my son, Paul, had teachers that were coaches for the week. And one was a calculus teacher. And Paul always had he was used to it. We always did here, had everybody after the game back to the house. And that teacher said to me, I learned so much, he said, because I got a kid that takes calculus at one guard and the other guards in my general math, and they're working together excellently. He just, and so, and any of the sports, the complexity and the dedication, and then it teaches kids that, and I think kids benefit from any of those things, even like your news bowl, whatever. It teaches them, okay, you got to put it out there, and you might not win. You may look stupid, you may whatever, and you're teaching them, I think, a very important skill. I think the vital skill, the willingness to put it out there. And then also the fun of winning, the losses that I still moan about. Nobody understands it. So coaches from other schools, we're all very close. And the lines, when you're in the game, maybe you might say awful things. We had an agreement with the Fable Manly's coaches. We didn't talk after the game. Everybody thought we were indignant, or like Al Vedder and Carl Bjork would not shake hands. But the losing team had to put a party on that afternoon for the other coaches. That wasn't public, but at the end of a game, you can say some things. I don't know when this idea of shaking hands at the end of a game came about. I like what you see with the pros and the colleges more, those that want to share ideas with each other, and you usually see it. But and sportsmanship was different in those days, I guess you'd say.
When we talked last, you lamented that in your early years as a basketball coach, you lost a lot of 1-point games, that if you were able to do those over again, you wouldn't have lost so many.
I bet you I would have won 4 of the 6, if not more. Okay. Those were my losses as a new coach. I also didn't treat my players so that they felt I did on the freshman level. I couldn't transpose it. What happened was I became a varsity coach way too quick. I was a JV coach and then the varsity coach Well, they just decided and they thought I could put things together, and they wanted me to coach. And I just didn't feel my first couple of years that I really we did good things. I look back and I go, well, I guess I wasn't all that bad or whatever. But my holding together, didn't develop as much. And see, other coaches had different views. I'd go to coaching clinics, and his name slips me, and darn it,
It's
the
okay.
Kentucky coach, who's so well known, it slips me. That's okay. I never did like him afterwards. But anyways, I told him my philosophy of coaching, and he said, "Son, stop saving souls and start winning ball games." And I didn't. But therefore, I was spending some time saving souls when maybe I should have been winning ball games. And and it's that the real good guys blend it together. Mike Krzyzewski said once, here's the defense, but if this X doesn't like this X, and this one here's always late, and this one here's that, you can run any defense you want, you're going to get beat. And that team building, which now businesses, my son speaks to businesses to help them develop team building. In the old days, it's a shame it wasn't there. I mean, you take the writers strike like today and the actors going with it. But if you're developing a team building and you listen to the YouTube on Seinfeld, him writing and the other guys, it should never reach that level. There's a lot of unique, intelligence things that could write shows, and so you've lost the handle. Well, it's the same thing if you're coaching a team. You got some kids think one way and another. Jimmy Stratton said to me, I'll never forget, that's when I started getting better. He came out and Spike Umstead, who was wheelchair bound.
Yes, he was in our class.
Okay, Jimmy put in a shot, tied ball game, and went in overtime. And Jimmy came over, he said, Coach, he said, Spike's crying. I said, Jimmy, sometimes you don't realize the effect you have when you're playing a game. He's thrilled for you, and it stunned him, but yeah, and it's fun. But I'll tell you, my high school coach took us down to watch the kids prepare for the musical, and Bonnie and I worked together. She wanted to know when it wasn't going to interfere with sports, and she put her musical on. She had my players dancing. I couldn't even get them to move like that on the court. But it was a team building, complete type of thing where you just,
That brings back memories. I remember that game.
Oh,
yeah. And Spike and I were in chess club, and
yes.
He was a good chess player,
Chess
and
player.
we enjoyed playing with each other. Later or someday, I have a great chess story regarding Coach Bjork, but we're going to have a whole session about him, I believe.
Yes,
So,
and I love that story. I
yeah.
really do. I really loved it. And I
Yes.
think the interesting thing, times change, different situations. Dick McGee always marveled at how the football team and different players would meet Spike at the bus, carry him to the wheelchair, carry him from upstairs downstairs. And Dick says, honest, I had nothing to do with that, setting it up. It just evolved.
Yeah, they didn't have elevators.
No, or any of those things.
Yeah.
But
No.
he was always taken care of
Yes.
in that sense because he was wheelchair bound, and we didn't have learning disabilities, but we had teachers that were very gifted, bringing out the best of everyone.
Yeah. For those of you who don't remember Spike, I think his name was Carl Umstead. He had severe cerebral palsy, and he could not walk and could barely talk and communicate. But he was a great student. It did not
Oh,
affect his intelligence at all, and he
no.
was a very good chess player.
And a
So,
great manager for us.
yeah, that's right.
But
So,
and he was, it was just so good,
yes.
and he
Um,
was included in everything.
let's talk a little bit. You taught until school year of 1993, is that correct?
Yes, well, I became a guidance counselor in
Uh-huh. Yes.
1970.
I see. When did you become a guidance counselor?
1970. When
Oh,
did I
okay.
become a guidance counselor? Harold Rankin and Dick McGee asked me if I'd go in and become a guidance counselor and make it different, make it my way.
Tell us about your experience as a guidance counselor, because it was after we graduated.
Well, I'd loved being a guidance counselor, but I missed the teaching. And I've always taught my students, try to invent your own job if you don't, so yes. And my approach was 24 hours a day. I was a guidance counselor. And I'm not saying it's good or bad. It's what I had to do and how I worked with it. So when I started, I wanted to be sure that I got to know all my kids. And the way it was set up, and I don't know if we really liked it or not, I took over the ninth grade and then went 10th grade. Then I went back ninth grade, 10th grade. And finally, we switched it to alphabetical, and I followed my kids for 4 years, which made a whole lot more sense.
Hmm.
Um, how do I say it right? Probably true of any job, but you could be a guidance counselor. You could do so many things, so many things. And I had the advantage of, and it used to be, you had to have 5 years of teaching before you became a guidance counselor. I didn't have a guidance counselor course till that summer. And you could do as little as you want or as much as you want in those days. And
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that. Uh, but we started to develop things, and I had to take courses. I was taking courses at Oswego. First course I had to take up there was statistics. Oh, baby. I had my master's degree in history. I'm going, what have you done? Had a great teacher by the name of Dr. Sipser, unbelievable good. And I utilized a lot of what he taught as in my career of going. I got to give C minus, but I learned how a great teacher, and you still could sit there and say, I don't know what's going on. And I had that feeling, a lot of times in my youth, I'd become the comic or whatever to dodge being in the jam. I knew all the tricks that helped me as a teacher too. But then I took a course from this guy on careers, and I thought, oh God, and boy, he taught me so much. I still utilize a lot of it even today when I talk to kids. Um, a whole bunch I learned from that course. I do, wow. Well, I had one of the toughest kids I've ever worked with, and I brought her home, and the poor gal, she's scared even Mary Lee when she came in, and she was tough, real tough kid. Still stay close to her. I mean, really tough. And I had her evaluate me her senior year, and she thought the only thing I really helped her with was that career stuff. That taught
Hmm.
me a big lesson. That okay, I got a tough life, tough beans, and you got me so I could get a job or whatever. And so then my career took on every kid, and it was hard to reach them all, but I worked at it. I had them write notes, and I'd carry a box around with me before email. Boy, if I was there with email, they'd throw in things, and then I'd get them and write them notes back. A lot of boys don't like going to a guidance office. That's,
I didn't. Yeah.
That's, that's not their thing. So I'd meet them on their turf, wherever their turf was. Kid worked at the gas station. I go down and see him at the gas station. Um, get them on their turf. I learned that from Tony DeBonis' 25th anniversary with his wife. They had a party at the Southwood Fire Barn, and I went there and met and talked to so many people. And I know I could sense they didn't feel they belonged going up that high school. So I had parent meetings in the Southwood Fire Barn, and up at Springfield Gardens, and tracked down things, So we did it in a unique, different way. And I grew from there. And I did a lot of things that, I don't know, it just sort of surprised me. But when computers came out, I set up a database and had all the data for my kids planning on their schools, what they did, everything else, and collected a lot of data, helping kids make decisions. And then when it got to the counseling kids for high school to college, I had one mission that was very important to me, and I still have it. Everybody has their say but the kid, and I wanted to change that. I said, you got to have your say. It's your decision. They don't like it. The hell with them. We're developing for you. And that's where a series of questions came up that I know I can get a kid convinced. I'm not convinced, it's true. They know who they are and they know what they want to do. They don't know how they're going to do it. And that isn't even important. You don't have to become that isn't what the deal is. And we build like different questions, if you had to choose between knowledge or a good job, what would you choose? Those kinds of questions. They know. And therefore I took great pride in that. My kids, we worked diligently, and we set up a whole pattern of, my kids would go and interview colleges. They wouldn't go to be interviewed from a college. You're the one. Let's find out what this is about. I was blessed because then, I wasn't ready to retire. Education is the craziest thing because they give you a big bonus to leave when you're good. There's a lot of good people who, So I ended at Le Moyne's with admissions, and I'd use the same tools for the kids that came in. Kids would come in and they've been trained to say, oh, how many full professors do you have? Well, they don't really care how many full professors you have and how many of this and that. We go, no, and so I'd always start off with all those questions. And they're questions they know the answers to. Very simple.
You were at Le Moyne for about 10 years, is that correct?
20 years.
20 years.
Yeah.
Wow. And you
I
were
was at JD for 34.
Yeah. You were forced to retire because they eliminated
a part-time position.
Oh, that's too bad.
Well, yes, and and yet I think I told you, even though, and boy, it hurt, and everybody was upset, and I had thousands of letters and all it was. The world tried to become corporate instead of looking at the individual, which is not Le Moyne's style. That ended quickly, but at any rate, yeah. But it helped me because I had four of my former students that got cut from positions, and I knew the feeling very well and how it hurts.
I remember that talking with you then. It was 2013, as I recall. Yeah.
And it really hurts.
So if somebody watches this and then sends you a message, Coach Muench, suit up, I need you for assistant coach, what would you say?
Oh, I'd take it and drop the hat, but I got to mention one thing. When I stopped coaching basketball, because I wasn't playing with my own kids, it was sort of embarrassing when I realized I wasn't home during Thanksgiving, Christmas, all those things. We didn't go on vacations or whatever. We didn't have much money anyway. But so Monsignor O'Brien, after Mass, said to me in front of Mary Lee, Tom, would you think of coming back coaching CYO? And my wife said, the Catholic Church isn't getting me a divorce. So I said, I don't think so. I don't think.
Yeah.
Yes, when Paul coached, I would help out. Oh yeah. But I also would love to go back to the emissions at Lemoyne. I go up to JD sometimes and talk with some kids. But I would love to be advisors for teachers and get teachers coming back. The state of New York, according in my viewpoint and according to me, that's not an opinion. Boy, there's an awful lot of states that drove teachers out of teaching. Do you know that in New York State, they set up a testing situation and there wasn't an educator at the meeting? Two political people, the owner of a testing company, and business people. And Jennifer Catney, one of the best teachers going around, just couldn't take it anymore. She said they're robbing kids from their childhood. And everything became testing. I got phone calls from elementary school parents wanting to have their kids tutored, getting ready for a test. Jeez, you know? And I would love to be able to promote more of that. We have wonderful people that just, when the real good teachers, like my sons, complain about things, you go, wow. And but yeah, I'd in life, I don't believe that you should go back and say, oh, I do it all over this way or that way in many respects, because yeah, I would like to have that knowledge coaching that team, but I wouldn't have had that knowledge without going through all the things that it did. I mean, failure's a very important lesson and a good lesson. And I learned more from my failures and mistakes than ever successes. I think that I really think we've got to take the position of teachers. My son Paul, and he's idolized there. They love him, and Billy, not so much Billy, but Vermont it was a little bit different. But Paul, he said, when did we become the bad guys? All of a sudden, he says, people don't like me. I'm a teacher. What's going on? You know? And yes, I'd be ready to still wing it.
Interesting.
It.
Yeah. Which of your sons taught at Fayetteville Manlius?
That's Paul.
Yeah.
And I told you before, and that's when he was at Oswego High School, coaching and everything else, and teaching, and unbelievable. And then he went to Fayetteville Manlius, and I don't think he'd mind me telling. The first time he went, they interviewed him. They called him Fayetteville Manlius, and the committee said, "You'll have better students here." And he got up and walked out. They wrote him letters and everything else. Bullshit. You don't, you know. But at any rate, he became the head football coach, and all the JD kids of your era in the 70s and the 80s are going, how could you allow it? They'd see me. How could you allow that? And his buddies, Scott Schwades and those guys. Jeez. And then surprisingly, some of his players were former students of mine's kids. The Doolittles were over there and other people. But it was funny. It was funny, but, and again, it was interesting.
Yeah. For those of you who are not from Central New York, FM Fayetteville Manlius was nicknamed, the initials are FM, and Janesville DeWitt was JD, and the two schools were arch rivals, very, very competitive. Do you remember the East Coast Model United Nations Conference?
Yes, very much
Yes.
so.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead.
did you go to that?
Yeah, I was on the delegation 2 years. As a junior year, I was on the delegation from Malawi, and then senior year we were the Soviet Union. And
When did we have it at the school? What year was
1966. It was late spring of
that? Was
1966.
cool.
That was incredible.
Oh, it was so cool. Every teacher, that's an example of teachers. Every teacher, house kids, Carl Bjork was in charge of delivering the bags. Everybody, Vince did a sensational job.
Yeah, Vince Monterosso was the advisor,
Yeah.
but we used to have practice sessions with FM kids.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and we got along.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, matter of fact, there was a girl there that I liked. I even took her out one time to an FM dance. So maybe and that was right around the time. Remember they were talking about with the Soviet Union détente.
Yes.
So maybe we started a détente with FM.
Well, I'll never forget. I think I told you the story about my son Paul giving an award to Tommy Hall, we were very close friends to the coaches. We played on a softball team together. But Paul gave this award, and it was the older coaches and people that understood it, because it was really funny. He said, I went to Jamesville DeWitt High School, and I was taught two things: to hate communism and Fayetteville Manlius.
That's right.
That's what I
So
was.
we started a détente with Fayetteville Manlius.
Right.
Good. Yes. Well, we're about an hour, and I don't want to stop, but and most people have probably not stuck with us. I hope many of you have. Just a little update. We started, we're constructing a website called thevoiceofmeaning.com, and your interview will be on that. We have an email address, thevoiceofmeaning@gmail.com. I really would appreciate all of your former students, all of Mr. Muench's and Coach Muench's former students. Write something in the comments, ask them a question. This is your golden opportunity. We really hope that you'll subscribe to our channel, because we have a lot of classmates that I would love to interview that have done very, very meaningful and significant things over the years, because the idea of the voice of meaning is to spotlight people who are doing meaningful things in lives, and you certainly qualified. And if you want to hire Mr. Muench or Coach Muench, put something in the comments too, and email us at the voiceofmeaning@gmail.com.
I never know how you sign up on YouTube.
Okay,
You plan to that?
what you do is you'll get a link in your email box, also in Facebook. You click on the link, and there's the interview, and underneath it will say subscribe. And if you hit subscribe,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Also, there's a little bell symbol. If you ring the bell, then automatically, whenever we produce a video, you'll be notified.
Oh, good.
Yeah, but also on our website, we're going to have a contact us button, and hopefully we'll assemble an email list. This is not going to be for commercial purposes. We're not selling any products, though I want to help sell Billy's movie that we're going to have a whole different meeting about, and I'm going to put a link to his website, called The Artist and the Astronaut, and hopefully the movie will be somehow publicly shown at a wider audience. There's so many things in directions that we can go, possibly having a live meeting that people can ask you questions.
Wouldn't it be fun?
And also, I would like you and your sons and St. Mary to all together be on a Zoom meeting and have a discussion about education,
Oh,
because
boy.
it's just amazing that two out of your three sons became teachers, and your wife was a teacher. It's a profession that's not appreciated enough, and we sure appreciate you. I hope we get hundreds of comments from your former students. I'll put it up on the alumni, JD alumni YouTube, not YouTube, Facebook group, as well as our class of 67. And if other classes have Facebook groups, please share them. I feel that you've given a wonderful contribution. And one last thing, you hate to brag, but I went through 4 years of college, and I remember more from that ninth grade world geography class than the whole entire 4 years of college of what I remember.
Boy,
So
that
thank
makes
you
me
for
feel
that.
really good. That
Yeah,
makes me feel good.
thank you for that.
That-
And
As a closing comment from my end, one of the things, having taught 54 years myself, is what makes all the difference of a good teacher is the passion that they approach the task. I think all the teachers I remember, I had this really special group of teachers in high school that were just amazing people. They were all passionate about what they were teaching, and you definitely showed that in your story, how passionate you were, and the hundreds and hundreds of young people that you influenced that are now older people.
Right.
And they're, I don't say old people, older people.
Right.
Yeah. And they're probably handing off what they learned from you to their kids. So
Yeah, that's
teaching is
wonderful.
a very, very important,
Oh,
not a job. It's a passion.
it is.
thank you, Ulrich. Ulrich's one of my best friends, and it's just delightful that we have the technology that I can share visiting with my favorite teacher from 1963 with one of my favorite people from 2023. It's incredible.
Isn't it?
So with that, I'm going to sign off. And
Thank you very, very much. I enjoyed it.
thank you. And please subscribe, like,
Oh, I will.
share this interview, all of you who are listening.
Hit like, subscribe, ring the bell.
Okay.